You don't know what you're talking about. Those words hit me like a slap during the video call. My cursor froze on the screen. 20 client executives stared back at me through their tiny squares. My face felt hot. I could feel the embarrassment crawling up my neck like something alive. My director, Malcolm, laughed, a light, dismissive sound. The kind of laugh you use when correcting a child who said something silly. Let's not confuse the client here, Brenna. Maybe we should stick to facts. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I had facts. Had numbers. I had spent 3 weeks building this presentation. I had stayed late every night checking and rechecking the data. The spreadsheets were color-coded. The graphs were clean. Everything was correct. But now, sitting at my desk with my headset on, I felt completely invisible. He kept talking. His voice was smooth and confident. The clients leaned in, interested in what he was saying. I watched my words get smaller on the screen. My proposal, my ideas, my work. All of it was becoming less important with every sentence he spoke. The worst part. He knew exactly what he was doing. I could see it in how he paused before each criticism, letting the silence build. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. He didn't stop. He went through my proposal line by line, picking it apart like it was a bad student's homework. This data looks misinterpreted, he said, pointing at my chart. I had pulled that information directly from the client's own reports. He suggested I rushed the work. I didn't rush. Obsessed. I gripped my pen so hard that it snapped. The crack sound was small, but it felt enormous in my headset. The clients' faces remained blank. They didn't defend me. Nobody spoke up. The silence was worse than any words could be. I finally managed to speak. My voice sounded strange to me, like it belonged to someone else. That figure came directly from your company's third quarter report, I said. I pulled it from. He cut me off. Again. Let's look at the bigger picture, he said, moving forward like I hadn't spoken at all. The bigger picture. That meant ignoring the details I had worked so hard to verify. It meant accepting his version of reality instead of the actual facts. The clients nodded along as he talked. They didn't seem to notice that he was taking credit for strategies I had developed. He was explaining my ideas as if they had come from him. I could feel my colleagues in the background, the ones watching from other desks. They were quiet. Nobody wanted to get involved. Understood. You don't defend someone when the boss is making an example of them. That's just how it works in offices. You stay quiet. You protect yourself. You hope next time it's not your name being torn apart in front of everyone who matters. Smiled. Felt plastic fake. I nodded along to everything he said. Then I muted myself. I needed to not be heard. I needed to disappear into the background. My reflection in the black screen showed someone I didn't recognize. My eyes looked too bright, almost feverish. My jaw was locked so tight it hurt. This was happening live. Right now. In front of people we were trying to impress. In front of the client who paid our company money. Everyone would remember this. They would remember how Malcolm corrected me. They would remember how I couldn't defend myself. They would remember that I was the kind of person who got pushed around. And the worst part, Malcolm would remember too. He would know that he had won. He would understand in that quiet way that bullies understand, that I was too shocked to fight back. That I would probably feel ashamed. That I might even start to doubt my own work. He had planted a seed of uncertainty in the client's mind about my abilities. That was the goal. That was always the goal with him. The call continued without me. Kept my mute button on. My hands sat in my lap. I watched his mouth move on the screen. I watched the client smile at his jokes. I watched him lean back in his chair like he owned the room, even though he was calling in from his office just 2 floors above mine. I didn't cry when the call ended. The screens went dark. Everyone hung up. I sat there with my headset still on, listening to the sound of my own breathing. It was like I had been underwater and just surfaced. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. It was something else. Something colder. Something clearer. 10 minutes later, an email arrived in my inbox. The subject line made my stomach drop. It wasn't addressed to me. It wasn't meant for me. It was a forwarded chain, and Malcolm had accidentally included me on a reply that he thought was going to his boss. Clicked open. The words there were different from the Malcolm everyone saw on client calls. This Malcolm was honest. Brutally honest. He called the client clueless about their own business model. He admitted that he approved the wrong figures for the presentation. He said it wasn't really his fault because Brenna handles those details. Then came the worst part. He wrote, "She's useful as a shield when we need someone to blame." My hands shook. My breathing changed. This wasn't just a bad day. This wasn't just one person being difficult. This was a pattern. This was something bigger. This was proof. I read the email 3 times. Each time the words stayed the same. They didn't change. They didn't soften. I could picture Malcolm writing it, probably smiling to himself, probably feeling clever. He had no idea that I would see this. He had no idea that his accidental email had just shown me who he really was. I didn't cry. I didn't march into his office to confront him. I didn't scream or throw things. Instead, I closed the email. My mind was working in a different way now. I was thinking, planning. I wasn't angry yet. I was focused. There's a difference. Anger makes you act fast and stupid. Focus makes you act smart. I opened a folder on my desktop. I named it Work in simple letters. Then I did something that would change everything. I forwarded that email to myself. The one where he called the client clueless. The one where he admitted to approving wrong figures. The one where he said I was just a shield for blame. I saved it. I saved the date and time. I saved everything. Over the next 3 weeks, I started watching Malcolm differently. Not in an angry way. In an observational way. I noticed who he praised on team calls. It was always the people who didn't push back. I noticed who he silenced. It was people like me who actually had ideas. I noticed how blame always traveled downward, like water finding the lowest point. And I noticed how credit always floated upward, sticking to him like he was magnetic. I started saving things. Not in a crazy way. Not in a way that would be obvious. Just emails, meeting notes, calendar invites. Everything was dated. Everything was factual. I wasn't interpreting anything. I wasn't adding emotions or opinions. I was just collecting evidence. I was building a file that would tell a story all by itself. The second slip happened 3 days later. Another email, this one meant for his friend in the leadership team. This one was worse than the first. He was joking about how the clients never noticed when he switched out team members. He was talking about managing expectations downward, so that people wouldn't notice when he took shortcuts. He was putting all of it in writing. Again, my pulse stayed even. My hands didn't shake. This wasn't luck. It wasn't random. It was arrogance. Malcolm believed he was untouchable. He believed that nobody would ever check his emails. He believed that nobody would ever have the courage to stand up to him. He had no idea that I was watching. He had no idea that every careless email was another piece of the puzzle. I didn't share those emails. Not yet. Instead, I did something that most people wouldn't think of. Became unignorable. I volunteered for cross-team projects. I documented every outcome carefully. I wrote my emails clearly, copying the right people in the right way. Became solid. Not loud. Just solid. The kind of person people started coming to directly instead of going through Malcolm. The client started asking for me specifically on calls. I heard the hesitation in Malcolm's voice when he had to loop me back in. It was small. It was subtle. But it was there. Power shifts don't announce themselves. They whisper. And if you're paying attention, you hear them. Malcolm changed his behavior after that. He became gracious. He started complimenting my work in meetings. He was suddenly warm and supportive. It was unsettling. Like watching someone rehearse sincerity. Like seeing an actor playing a role instead of being real. He didn't know why the power had shifted. He didn't understand what he had done wrong. He just knew that something had changed. I waited. I documented more. I saved more emails. I added them to my folder. The file grew thicker. The story it told became clearer. I didn't go to HR. That would have been the obvious move. HR exists to protect the company, not to protect you. I wanted something bigger than just an HR investigation. I wanted process. I wanted impact. I wanted Malcolm to understand that there were consequences for what he had done. Not just to me but to everyone he had bullied over the years. The third email was the one that sealed everything. Came in my inbox, again accidentally forwarded. This time he was writing to the compliance team. He was talking about covering himself if leadership asked questions about the presentations. He was joking about optics. He was being strategic about how to protect his reputation. And he was putting it all in writing. Again, this email was proof of intent. This email showed that he knew what he was doing was wrong. This email showed that he was trying to hide something. This email was the capstone on everything else. I saved it immediately. The next morning I did something that terrified me and excited me at the same time. I forwarded exactly one email. Not to HR. Not to his boss. Not to everyone at the company. I forwarded it to the compliance lead who was overseeing our account with the major client. The person whose job was to make sure everything was above board. I didn't add a caption. I didn't add commentary. I didn't even add emotion. Just facts. Just the email. Just evidence. The subject line was simple. FYI, compliance question. That was it. Nothing else. I hit send before I could change my mind. My heart was pounding so hard I thought my coworkers might hear it. But I didn't feel regret. Felt clear. Like I had finally done the right thing. Like I had finally stood up for myself in a way that mattered. 3 days passed after I sent that email. 3 days of silence. 3 days where I went to work and did my job like nothing had happened. I was terrified but I didn't show it. I was powerful and I didn't need to announce it. Malcolm started avoiding my eyes. He stopped coming to meetings where I was presenting. He rescheduled calls at the last minute. I felt it in the air. Something heavy, something waiting to fall. The atmosphere around him changed. People started acting differently when he walked by. They didn't talk to him. They didn't make jokes with him. They just moved around him. I didn't say anything to anyone. Focused on my work. I focused on the client relationship. I focused on doing things the right way. My hands didn't shake anymore. My breathing stayed normal. I had done what I needed to do. Now it was time to wait. A meeting appeared on his calendar. Leadership only. His name was on it. My name wasn't on it. But my work was. My name would come up in that room. My emails would be read. My documentation would be reviewed. Everything I had saved would finally matter. Everything that happened in that room would determine what came next. He didn't come to work the next day. Or the day after. Rumors started swirling through the office like wind through grass. People whispered. They speculated. Someone said he had been fired. Someone else said he quit. Someone else said he was on administrative leave. I didn't engage with any of it. I just worked. I just did my job. I just proved every single day that I deserved to be there. The client noticed the change immediately. They asked where Malcolm was. I explained the situation professionally. I said that we were restructuring the account management team. I said that I would be handling their work going forward. They seemed relieved. That told me everything I needed to know about how they felt about Malcolm. Leadership thanked me for my professionalism. They thanked me for documenting everything carefully. They thanked me for protecting the company by bringing compliance issues to the right people. Nobody asked me to explain myself. The evidence had already told them everything. They didn't need me to interpret it. The facts spoke for themselves. I was asked to step into an expanded role. Temporarily at first. The same client. The same responsibilities. But this time with actual authority. This time with the backing of leadership. This time as someone who had proven they could be trusted. An announcement went out to the whole company. It was brief and professional. It said that Malcolm's position was no longer with the organization. No details. No scandal. Just absence. His name disappeared from the org chart like it had never been there. His email stopped working. His office was cleaned out by facilities. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I didn't tell anyone what I had done. I just worked. I just proved that I had earned this position. I just showed everyone through my actions that I was exactly where I belonged. The story didn't need me to narrate it. People could figure it out for themselves. I closed the folder on my desktop. I didn't delete anything. Kept the evidence. You never know when you might need proof. But I didn't need to look at it anymore. The emails had done their job. The documentation had served its purpose. The facts had spoken. And the truth had won. I took a full lunch break for the first time in months. I sat outside in the sunshine. I watched people walk by. I breathed in the spring air. Felt lighter. Felt like myself again. The person that Malcolm had tried to make invisible was suddenly very visible. Not because I demanded attention, but because my work had always deserved it. The new role came with a raise. Not a huge one, but enough to matter. Came with a window in my office. Came with my name on the org chart. It came with people respecting what I had to say in meetings. Came with clients asking for me specifically. It came with knowing that I had earned every single bit of it through hard work and integrity. I thought about Malcolm sometimes. I wondered where he was working now. I wondered if he was treating people the same way there. I wondered if someone else would eventually do what I had done. But mostly I didn't think about him at all. He had taken up too much space in my head for too long. 6 months later, the company brought in a new director. His name was Peter. He was different from Malcolm. He actually listened to what people had to say. He gave credit where credit was due. He pushed back when someone was being unfair. He made mistakes sometimes, but he was honest about them. I realized that working for someone like this was supposed to be normal. It wasn't supposed to be this special. The client came to our office for a meeting. They brought their whole team. They brought their CEO. The CEO looked at me and said, "You're the one who fixed our account." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I had fixed something that Malcolm had broken. I had rebuilt trust that he had damaged. I had proven that I was worth more than he had ever said I was. I learned something during that whole experience that I'll never forget. Dignity doesn't need witnesses. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to fight dirty to win. Sometimes the most powerful response is letting someone's own words finish the story. Malcolm's emails had done all the work. I just had to have the courage to forward them to the right person. The best part. I had done it the right way. I hadn't gone to his boss and gossiped. I hadn't sent those emails to everyone to embarrass him. I hadn't made a scene or created drama. I had simply let the facts speak for themselves. I had simply protected the company. I had simply done my job. People started coming to me for advice. New employees asked how I had gotten ahead so fast. Senior team members asked me to join their projects. The CEO knew my name. The company knew my reputation. And it was all because I had stayed professional when everything in me wanted to fall apart. I never told anyone the full story of what Malcolm had done. Some of my coworkers probably figured it out. Some of them probably pieced together the timeline. But it didn't matter. They could see the results. They could see that something had changed. They could see that the right thing had happened. One day about a year later I got a message from one of my old teammates. The one who used to work under Malcolm with me. She had transferred to another department right after he left. She wrote, "I heard you forwarded his email. I heard that's why he got fired. I just wanted to say thank you. He made my life miserable, and I never had the courage to do anything about it. But you did." I felt something shift in my chest when I read that. It wasn't just about me winning. It wasn't just about me getting revenge. It was about someone else being protected. It was about making sure that the next person didn't have to suffer what we had suffered. It was about breaking a cycle. I logged off at 5 o'clock for the first time in years. Not because the work was done, but because it was time to go home. I didn't stay late anymore. I didn't feel like I had to prove myself. I didn't feel like I had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. I had already proven what I needed to prove. The rest would just be growth. The rest would just be building on something solid. The office felt different after Malcolm left. Felt lighter. People seemed happier. They seemed willing to share ideas without worrying about getting blamed later. The culture shifted. It shifted because one person had the courage to say that something was wrong. It shifted because I had done the right thing even when it was scary. I never regretted sending that email. Not once. Even when I was terrified. Even when I thought it might backfire. Even when I wondered if I had made a mistake. Deep down I knew I had done the right thing. And that knowledge made everything easier. Years later, when I was training new employees, I told them this story. I didn't tell them to go find an email and forward it. I told them to work hard, to document things, to stay professional, to believe in themselves even when someone tries to make them feel small. I told them that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just proving that you're better than the person who tried to hold you back. I moved up in the company. The client trusted me completely. They asked for me by name. They brought their new projects to me. They asked my opinion on big decisions. I had become essential. Not because I was perfect, but because I was reliable. 'Cause I did what I said I would do. 'Cause I cared about doing things the right way. The folder on my desktop stayed there for 5 years. I never needed to open it again. I never needed those emails. But they were there, and somehow that made me feel stronger. It was like a security blanket. It was proof that I had done the right thing. It was evidence that I had won the right way. Eventually I deleted the folder. I didn't need it anymore. My reputation had grown beyond what happened that day. My work spoke for itself. My success didn't depend on Malcolm's failure anymore. Just depended on who I had become. Looking back, the most important thing I learned wasn't about getting revenge. It was about understanding your own value. It was about knowing that you don't need someone else's approval to be good at your job. It was about realizing that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the truth do the talking. I had humiliation thrown at me in front of clients and coworkers. I had my confidence attacked. I had my work picked apart unfairly. But I didn't let that define me. I let it motivate me. And that made all the difference. When I finally logged off that last day before my new promotion, I did it on time. I did it with my head held high. And I never looked back.